Millions of pensioners risk becoming second-class citizens in their own country because of Labour's Digital ID scheme, and that's according to the leading campaign group Silver Voices. Now, they say that Sir Keir Starmer's plans prevent older people from being full members of society without a smartphone. Well, join me now is one of GBNews viewers who is also a pensioner, Sue Ashcome. Sue, always a pleasure to have your company. I've got to say this, my dad, who's 87, would not be able to cope with any of this. He can't even send a text. He hates paying for things on his phone, and he's not alone. There are 1.6 million British pensioners who don't even have a smartphone, and this new ID could completely clip them out of society. Sue, what say you?
Well, I agree. I mean, I have got a smartphone, but there's not a cat and owl's chance of me able to park my car with the car parking things that they do now. And I think there's an awful lot of old people, they always say, old people can do it. Not all old people can do it. Some can, some can't. And I don't see why they should be left out. Although, mind you, there's no way I'm going to get a digital ID if I can help it. I don't want the government knowing anything about me, especially a Labour government.
Well, Sue, I think you're not alone. And may I say, I also, irrespective, I'm not quite a pensioner yet, Sue, I can't stand those parking apps. The amount of times I've been like in a drizzly car park on a cliff in Cornwall, can't get a blooming signal, can't pay, too terrified to go for a Cornish pasty in case I get nicked. And it's just difficult to do. And I think pensioners just don't like the feeling that they must comply or get left behind. It just seems to be, in my opinion, anti-pensioner.
Well, it is anti-pensioner because that means, because I know the problems I have with that, I just don't go out. I don't go anywhere where I need to park my car unless I know there's a free car park. It's just ridiculous.
And so the notion that you have to have your smartphone, for example, to collect your pension or to collect anything, any of the benefits that you're entitled to, or even to do anything in society, I think just is very overwhelming for pensioners. Would you agree? Yes,
and I don't think it's just pensioners either. I think it's overwhelming for a lot of people, and they just don't want it. Why should the government be snooping into our lives and know what we're doing, where we're going, what we've got?
So can I ask you about that point you mentioned about you don't trust this government? A lot of people say that we saw during COVID lockdowns when governments got a real taste for things like COVID passports. They were threatening us with barcodes to go to the pub, to go to the church, to go anywhere. Are you concerned, Sue, that if they introduce this now, saying it's about stopping illegal immigration, actually it might spread right the way through our lives, and we'll have to show our passport, if you like, to be able to do anything?
Yeah, I mean, any pensioner who earns a bit more than the 12,270, I think it is now, they need to use self-assessment tax. I won't be able to use it. I'm used to use...
So we're going to have to leave it there. And look, I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm 55 and I just find it frustrating that we have to comply with all of this. And funny enough, I think a lot of people would agree with you. Sue Ashcome, thanks for joining us and thanks for being a GBNews viewer. Always an absolute pleasure to have you on, darling. Thank you very, very much indeed. Let's get back to studio.
Have you had a random call lately from a strange number, maybe trying to sell you something or even scam you? If so, your info could be out there. That's because of data brokers, shady companies that scrape the internet for your personal details and sell them to marketers or even scammers. These days, scammers can even use AI to mimic your friends' voices and trick you into sending money. It's not just annoying. Data brokers often target vulnerable people with high-interest loans or sketchy offers. But there is a solution. Incogni, the sponsor of this video. Incogni contacts data brokers on your behalf and requests your info be deleted from their databases. And because your data can keep popping up, Incogni keeps sending removal requests to make sure it stays gone. They've just launched a new unlimited plan with custom removals. If you find your info on a weird website, just send them the link and their privacy team will work to get it taken down. Getting started is easy. Hit the link in the description, create your account and let Incogni handle the rest. It's risk-free for 30 days and you'll get 60% off an annual plan with the code GBNews. Take back control of your data with Incogni.
Here now, it's a reaction from Nigel Nelson. Nigel, funny enough, pensioners aren't alone. In fact, the demographic that's most against this are young people who feel that it could be misused, the data could be mismanaged. Has to be said, we've spoken about this before, the Digital ID scheme seems to have the reverse Midas touch of anything that Sir Keir Starmer pins his colours to, people that don't like it.
Yeah, and also there's been a bit of a danger of mission creep because Keir Starmer has talked about adding extra things to this. So let's see where it finally ends up. Now, I was in favour of a compulsory right-to-work card, and that seems reasonable to me. Now, pensioners, of course, if they're not working, there's absolutely no reason why they should need digital ID at all. Government says that that if they do, they will find a way of getting around the fact they haven't got smartphones. But it seems to me, let's stick to the right to work bit. I think that you should be able to present one if you want a job. It'll make life much simpler for people doing that. It should weed out the illegal workers.
But it won't.
Well, it should. I mean, if a firm is going to employ somebody anyway, and they don't look at their paperwork as they're meant to do at the moment, then that'll continue.
How will it stop? Perhaps 2 million people already working illegally in the company have simply disappeared. They don't have volunteered to get a blooming.
No, they're not. And this is the point. I mean, I'm against the idea of a compulsory ID card. I was against it when Tony Blair brought it up. Against it now. The idea that if these cards really work and they work for your benefit, in which case then you might want them voluntarily.
Thank you very much, Nigel Nelson. Now, Johnson's former advisor, Dominic Cummings, he's accused Beijing of harvesting classified state secrets for years, saying officials deliberately buried that breach. Well, our political correspondent Olivia Utley joins us now, and also I'm joined by GBNews senior commentator Nigel Nelson. Olivia, welcome to the studio. I'm going to be honest, I don't really understand this story. I think it's very complicated. I've listened to it. I think I understand it less. People want to know, basically, will it result in anybody getting the old chop-chop?
Well, it's a very good question, Martin. I don't blame you for being confused. It's a complicated story. Essentially, the big question is, did senior officials or government ministers deliberately allow this case to collapse in order to further Britain's political relationship with China? So essentially, did ministers compromise Britain's security in order to have better economic ties with China? Now, the government says absolutely not. There is no question that this is a political decision. The government maintains that why this case couldn't go through was because the previous government didn't officially designate China as a threat. And because China wasn't officially designated a threat, there was no sort of pushback. You know, you try and prosecute these men for spying for China. Well, China's not technically an enemy, so what's the problem? And that is why the case collapsed. Now, the opposition, the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, says that's nonsense. OK, China wasn't officially designated as a threat, but plenty of ministers, including Suella Braverman when she was Home Secretary, the head of MI5, have said, you know, off the record, but publicly, that China is a threat. Everyone knows that China is a threat to national security. So you're sort of getting into semantics if you say, well, China hasn't been designated as a threat, so we can't say that China is a threat. Yeah. It seems a bit ridiculous. So that case seems to be kind of falling apart for Keir Starmer. And now he is having to answer serious questions about this. The question of who, if anyone, would get the sack over this, well, it's the National Security Advisor and the Deputy National Security Advisor who were in the firing line. It was the Deputy National Security Advisor who gave the evidence. That is evidence that we are now about to see. Keir Starmer is going to have to publish it. But the question is, why did he not speak to the National Security Advisors? Surely this is a pretty big story. Why did he not speak to the Home Secretary? So it seems as though the government is sort of trying to direct all the blame at the Deputy, but will that actually go up the chain? Will it be that the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, who's a very close ally of Keir Starmer's, gets in trouble? And will it be that Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, gets in trouble? There is now a big intervention from Dominic Cummings, who says that actually China has been spying for a really long time in very, very serious ways. And back in 2020, he was in a meeting where it was senior officials divulged that China had been accessing the very, very most secret and most dangerous information. They'd been spying on our systems, they'd breached these systems, and senior officials, he alleges, covered the whole thing up because they wanted to have closer economic ties with China. And I'm just going to read a quote from a couple of quotes, actually, from this Times article, because it's pretty astonishing. Dominic Cummings, senior advisor to Boris Johnson's right-hand man in 2020, said, the answer was that there's been a political choice made in this country to prioritise Chinese money over security against China. Strong Whitehall forces are desperate for Chinese money. That is what he is alleging. And he now says that officials would have buried it, and it wouldn't surprise me if not a single current minister in the government even knows about that. So the heat at the moment seems to be on senior government officials, people in the civil service, who it is alleged are trying to ingratiate themselves with China, are happy to bury huge security breaches, happy to bury this major spying case in order to have a close relationship.
Superb stuff. Olivia, Nigel Nelson.